Greetings and salutations. Hope this finds you well. Just some quick thoughts on Chomsky and how he has been a problematic figure on the left for quite some time, and this precedes by several decades, if not many, his known, which was right, just revealed his known pretty close friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. And why do I say this? Well, it's obviously, hugely problematic that he had such a close association with a known child sexual predator, sex trafficker, just horrible human being on so many levels. And Chomsky, as these Epstein file releases shown, was like this with him for quite some time. Problematic, right? But Chomsky's also problematic on another level. His whole career, he has been a very strong anti-communist, or is what Michael Parenti, rest in power, described as left. He was a left anti-communist, and it makes a whole lot of sense why somebody like Noam Chomsky was held in such high regard, even in the mainstream or more mainstream than somebody like Michael Parenti was. It's because of his left anti-communism, why Chomsky was written about in publications like the New York Times, for example, or why he was so prominently featured on other, what I would say, left anti-communist outlets like Democracy Now!, when Parenti was hardly seldom invited on those outlets and definitely never featured in or interviewed by the New York Times because of his left anti-communism. How he denigrated, before the fall, he denigrated the USSR and took a very reactionary and not immaterial analysis of the USSR and its structure and how it needed to have a very strong state power in place, because they were throughout their history battling Western and particularly US imperialism, who was throughout the time of the USSR trying to overthrow that socialist project. And it's not super surprising when you look at Chomsky's politics and how he identified as a anarcho-syndicalist, because obviously anarchists like Chomsky and others, they don't believe in the state or state power, and they only believe in revolutions in theory once a state has a revolution and there's a socialist party in power who takes state control. They're bad, they're horrible, they're against AES, actually existing socialism, which is problematic. And you could also point out, well, has there ever been a anarchist revolution of any size or duration that has lasted or achieved the type of advancements both in the material conditions for the people in that society? Look at the USSR, for example. The highly increased the productive capacity of that society. Everybody had a right to employment, housing, healthcare, etc. The economic and political rights of women in that society advanced greatly after the socialist revolution. You could say the same thing about Cuba and the DPRK, etc. But anarchists like Chomsky don't don't take into consideration, because they're totally and completely against state power. And in the current material conditions in the world, you need a strong state power in order to thwart the efforts of U.S. and Western imperialism to constantly overthrow any type of socialist project that has taken root. But Chomsky is an anarchist. He does not have that material understanding of the world, and hence why, he is a left anti-communist. So he's problematic from that regard, as well as his close association with Jeffrey Epstein. And not to say, obviously, right, that we need to throw out the baby with the bathwater. He still is. He's still alive. He's a very smart individual. He has some useful insights and analysis to offer. He has been a pretty vocal critic of U.S. foreign policy, which is good, on the surface level, and people are just starting to kind of get politically conscious. A figure like Chomsky can be helpful to orient people in the correct direction, but that only goes so far, because again, he has this critique of the system, but he offers no alternatives of what a new world could look like that would benefit the working folks, both internally here in the United States and outside of the belly of the beast abroad. And that is the failing of the anarchist project, because they don't really have anything to offer besides a critique of the current system, but no really concrete or helpful insight about how that could be changed for the long term. Because in order to do that, you need a materialist analysis that would ultimately lead anybody in the orientation of socialist state building, because again, it's either socialism or barbarism. There's no third option. Anarchism is a dead-end political project, and hence why Chomsky was a left anti-communist. And also the fact that Parenti and Gabriel Rockhill have pointed this out about Chomsky. He was never really willing to give any thought or credence to quote-unquote conspiracy theories within the United States. For example, the assassination of John F. Kennedy, and the pretty credible evidence that the U.S. Intelligence services played in facilitating and supporting that assassination, which, I don't know, so that's also a bit problematic. So again, it really all just comes down to, like, it makes a whole lot of sense when you look at Chomsky's worldview and outlook, why somebody like him would be promoted and celebrated by liberal establishments, mainstream media, left anti-communist outlets. Which I would throw in, outlets like Democracy Now! Into that, why they would raise Chomsky up and promote him, as opposed to somebody like Michael Parenti, who was a Marxist, who had a material analysis of the world and had a program of how, the world could be bettered by, states, peoples around the world adopting socialism. And he highlighted all of the problems that befell the USSR after it fell, and all of the problems that came with that. And I would highly recommend, I'm just reading again, Black Shirts and Reds by Michael Parenti, or any of his works, or assassination of Julius Caesar, etc. Peace, love. Let me know what you think down below. All power to the people.